5 Sinister rules my father revealed for surviving haunted rural North Dakota. I've never disobeyed. The air felt thick with dread as twilight fell over the Johnson family farm. I was always told, when the sun bleeds, the spirits watch. Sinister whispers echoed through the walnut trees, the shadows stretching longer than memory, darker than night. Growing up, there was safety in my father's rules: never cross the line of the fog, always wear red after sunset, do not feed the shadows, listen to the dark, trust no one, not even your own shadow. I had never dared to break them. On that late autumn evening, the chill seeped into my bones. Dad had ventured out to check the well. It was an old ritual, a line of protection against whatever prowled in the night. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky crimson. Jimmy, my little brother, clung to my side, eyes wide, fear etched across his innocent face. I could feel it too. A pit forming in my stomach as silence enveloped us, only punctured by the occasional rustle outside, a warning that something unnatural lingered beyond our walls. As darkness settled, the lights flickered once, twice, thrice, before plunging us into pitch blackness. My heart raced. Were those whispers coming from the walls? Lily, they seemed to echo my father's voice, but distorted, warped. Should I follow? Panic washed over me, but I fought the urge. Rule number 1, never venture into the darkness alone. I was supposed to protect Jimmy, not lead us to doom. That we sat huddled in candlelight, the shadows dancing like they had a mind of their own. Then the growl came, a low, throaty menace that sent chills racing down my spine. I looked at Jimmy, our unspoken bond firming between us, but curiosity gnawed at my insides. I recalled Dad's stories of shadows taking form, an ancient menace that guarded what it haunted. What if whatever lurked out there had taken my father? Just then, a crash shattered the atmosphere, a sound coming from the direction of the well. My heart plummeted. Whispering warnings flooded my mind: trust no one. My father's fierce voice rang in my ears as I gripped the flashlight, my only ally against the unknown. Fear battled with resolve, and instinct pushed me to step into the unforgiving night. With Jimmy at my heels, the moment the door creaked open, the air crackled with a strange electricity, alive with an ominous tension. The trees bent low, their branches like fingers reaching for us. My breath caught in my throat as I caught a fleeting glimpse. Was that my father standing by the well? The familiar shape drew me in, but as I called out, he vanished into the darkness, swallowed whole. Cold dread washed over me, a premonition that something dreadful awaited beneath the surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In that moment of silence, panic surged through me as realization struck. We weren't just haunted, we were trapped, cut off from the very legacy meant to protect us. The earth beneath our feet trembled, shadows thickened around us, and laughter low, mocking echoed through the trees. I held Jimmy tight, his small frame trembling against mine, as dread settled like a stone in my stomach, hinting at the horrors still hidden, waiting to be unleashed. What had my father drawn us into? The growling intensified, reverberating through the air, curling around us like a giant serpent ready to strike. My flashlight beam flickered, revealing splintered branches and swirling fog. I could hardly believe what was happening. Everything I knew was unraveling at the seams. Lily, Jimmy whispered, his voice barely audible over the rising wind. I wanted to reassure him, to tell him everything would be all right, but my throat felt dry and tight, as if the fear had wrapped itself around my words. Then, I saw it again, the shadow, the silhouette that almost looked like my father. Dad! I shouted, my voice cutting through the tension. No answer came. Just the sighing wind and that dreadful growl, which seemed to dance with my desperation, mocking me. That I gripped the flashlight tighter, my knuckles white, and I took a tentative step toward the well. Each step felt heavier than the last, like I was slogging through a pit of despair. I could feel Jimmy's little hand clutching at my sleeve, his presence anchoring me in this nightmare. I couldn't let go, I had to keep him safe. Suddenly, the air froze, as if every creature in the woods held its breath. I peered into the darkness of the well. It loomed like an abyss, yawning wide and hidden under matted vines. The flashlight beam faltered. What if he's in there? The thought burst through my mind like a cold slap. Could I really let it happen? My heart raced as I pictured my father, helpless. My decision hardened like steel. We have to check, I said, a trembling resolve in my voice. Jimmy whimpered softly but nodded, determination creeping into his eyes. As we approached, the growling turned to a cacophony of whispers, swirling and slithering around us. This is your fault, you unleashed them. The voices intertwined, suffocating. Be quiet. I shouted into the void, desperate to drown out the echoing blame. I was consumed by an overwhelming dread. Did they mean me? Had I done something to anger the spirits? I had always adhered to Dad's rules, but something in this moment felt wrong. As we reached the edge of the well, a sudden gust of wind blasted us back, knocking us to the ground. I scrambled to regain my footing, adrenaline surging. But when I looked up again, I found myself staring at a shape in the dark where my father had vanished. It's him! I shouted, the luminous beam of my flashlight piercing through the fog. My heart pounded in my chest, but just as quickly as I felt relief, it choked in my throat. The figure moved too many limbs, twisted and wrong. The face that turned towards us was a grotesque mockery of my father, eyes hollow and devoid of the warmth I had always known. Come closer, it beckoned with a voice that shattered inside of me like glass that I barely had time to react before Jimmy bolted for the figure. No! I screamed, tackling him to the ground before he reached the well. His eyes were wild, bereft of recognition. Let me go! He cried, flailing against me. The laughter returned, swirling around us, thickening the air with malice. They're hungry, feed them. Instinct took over as I pulled Jimmy closer, urging him back toward the shelter of the house. Run! I ordered, whispering in a tremor as I felt the shadows reach out, almost tangling with my feet. We sprinted, hearts pounding like war drums, desperation fueling our escape from that cursed well. But the laughter, oh the laughter, chased us through the night, lingering like a nightmare that wouldn't release its grip. As we dove back into the safety of our home, breaths ragged and hearts racing, I noticed the door was open too far, swinging wide in invitation. I froze. The shadows, I whispered, realigning with Dad's rules. My pulse quickened. What had followed us inside? Suddenly, the ground shook again, a deep, primal resonance, like a warning from the earth itself. As the shadows crawled back toward us, I could hear faint screams joining the cacophony, haunting and familiar. What had I unleashed? The fear clutched at my throat like icy fingers, and I realized we had only taken our first step deeper into this horror. The night was far from over, and something much worse awaited us. What would emerge from the darkness next? As the door creaked further open, a gust of cold air swept through the hallway, sending shivers racing down my spine. The shadows darted and danced like whispering phantoms, wrapping around the legs of our furniture, tugging at the edges of our sanity. Can you feel it, Jimmy? I asked, glancing down at him. His eyes were wide, fear and trust battling for dominance. I can feel them, Lily, he stammered, his small voice barely breaking the thick, suffocating air. It felt like the walls were closing in, hungry to consume us whole. I knew we had to act fast. My mind raced through my father's rules, desperately searching for answers. We can't let them in, I muttered. Stay close. Jimmy nodded, clutching my arm like a lifeline as we edged deeper into the house. The laughter grew louder, mingling with the whispers, a cacophony that reverberated along the walls. Feed them, the voices taunted, each word slicing through the heavy tension. I darted to the living room, my heart hammering as I scanned for something, anything, that could protect us. The relics of Dad's survival strategies seemed useless now. The shotgun hung on the wall, untouched, a mere artifact of a past life. No. I barked, memory of his warnings weighing on me. How could I forget? The rules came rushing back, each one more forbidding than the next. Suddenly, a bone-chilling wail echoed from the shadows, resonating through the floorboards. My instincts kicked in, and I rushed to the window, fumbling to shut the curtains. It wasn't just the grotesque figure of my father outside, something worse lurked in the darkness. Through the fabric, the swirling shadows writhed like trapped souls, stretching, clawing for entry. "Lily, what are we going to do?" Jimmy whimpered, his voice trembling with every word. I felt a twisting knot of fear in my stomach, and for a moment, I felt powerless. My little brother's safety became my singular focus. "Remember Dad's first rule," I whispered, forcing confidence into my voice. "We don't let them in." But as if the universe intended to taunt me, the ground trembled again, more violently this time. "It's breaking, Lily," he cried, pointing towards the old wooden floor that creaked ominously under our feet. That I gritted my teeth, adrenaline surging. "We need to find something to block the door." "Help me." Jimmy nodded, his fear transformed into determination. Together we started to gather whatever we could find, chairs, weights, anything we could shove in front of that door. The shadows swirled and shrieked, filling the air with anguish. "Keep going, Jimmy. We need to hurry." The haunting laughter escalated, surrounding us as if the shadows had formed a noose, slowly tightening with every second. With one final shove, I wedged an old bookcase against the door, my face slick with sweat. Just as I stepped back to catch my breath, the lights flickered, and a deep growl emerged from the darkness, reverberating through my very bones. Then came the soft patter of feet. They approached with intent, gliding ominously across the floor. I couldn't tell where the sound originated, it just harmonized with the pulsating dread coiling around me. What if it's them?" Jimmy stammered, his eyes darting to every corner, every flicker of movement that I swallowed, trying to form a single coherent thought. "It can't be. They can't get in." But a groan echoed through the house, like the home itself was alive, begging for mercy. It clawed at my sanity, plunging me into despair. Suddenly, I caught a glimpse of movement behind the shadows, something small and familiar, the stuffed bunny Dad had given Jimmy when he was born, lying on the edge of the doorway. It was all I had to link back to sanity. "Stay close," I yelled, but as I turned back toward him, Jimmy was staring, horrified, at the door. "It's behind you." The shadows pounded against the wood, despairing and relentless. Feed them," they taunted again, drawing nearer. I felt the weight of my father's rules pressing down on me. I had to make a choice. To break the final rule would mean risking everything. As I glanced back at Jimmy, his face a mask of fear and recognition, my heart sank. Maybe it was already too late. "Lily," he started, voice trembling. "What if they really are hungry?" A deafening crash echoed as the door split open, and I braced for the unknown. The darkness exploded into the room, a ravenous void waiting to consume us. Could I protect him? Could I shield him from whatever awaited on the other side? The thought clawed at me as more shadows poured into the room, whirls of darkness and desperation, whispering the ancient hunger. And just like that, I knew we were only beginning to understand the depth of our horror. What were the shadows truly after? The shadows poured into the room like a thick fog, engulfing everything in their insatiable hunger. I felt the air grow dense, almost suffocating, as if the very presence of darkness had weight. I turned to Jimmy, and the innocence in his eyes was replaced by sheer terror. "Lily!" he cried, his voice breaking. "What do we do?" "Stay close," I shouted, but even as the words left my mouth, I felt a gnawing uncertainty gnaw at my insides. There was no place to run. The shadows had already snaked around the room, cutting off our escape, closing us in like prey. Then, from the depths of the swirling mass, I heard a whisper, soft but clear. "Feed them." It lingered, wrapping around my mind like a vine, trying to squeeze the breath from my lungs. I clamped my hands over my ears, desperate to drown it out. No! I yelled, but my voice felt small against the encroaching darkness. The floor trembled again, sending vibrations up my legs. I looked down, panic rising as the floorboards crawled beneath our feet. A deep rumble thundered from below, almost like the house was alive. I glanced toward the windows, but they were blurred by the shadowed mist, distorting everything outside. "Lily, what do they want?" Jimmy's voice was pleading, and I could see the tears brimming in his eyes. "What do we have to give them?" I don't know. But a chilling realization crept in. I recalled Dad's warnings, his rules embedded in my memory like a lifeline. He'd always spoken of the hunger, of what lurked beyond the veil of night. Feed them. The voices grew louder, rising above the pounding of my heart. I knew the answer was buried in the depths of my own dread. "Jimmy, what do we have?" My voice trembled, searching his frightened face for a sign of clarity. "Nothing," he whimpered. "We have to hide. We can't let them see us." And in that moment, it struck me. "The bunny!" I yelled, the words bursting forth like a spark. I dashed toward the doorway, the darkness swirling fiercely around me. The stuffed bunny lay a few feet away, illuminated by an almost ethereal glow, a beacon amidst the gloom. "No, stay back!" Jimmy screamed, but I couldn't stop. Dad had told me, it's the symbols that protect us. That's what the shadows wanted, something they could devour. As I reached for the bunny, a rush of wind swept past me, pushing me back. My heart raced as a form began to materialize from the shadows, twisting and reshaping, growing larger and more menacing. It towered over me, an amalgamation of darkness that seemed to shimmer with malice. I grasped the bunny in my hands, feeling its soft fabric beneath my fingers, a tie to warmth and safety. "This is all we have," I shouted, holding it up like a shield. The shadows recoiled slightly, but then surged toward me with renewed ferocity. "Feed them." They hissed again, and I realized they needed more than just the bunny. Something deeper, something personal. "What do you want?" I yelled, desperation lacing my voice. My throat felt tight, as if the shadows were squeezing the air from my lungs. "Feed them," the voices swelled, a chorus that seemed to echo from within me. I staggered back, heart pounding, mind racing. I had to make a choice. Did I dare give them what they truly craved? I looked at Jimmy, panic reflected in his wide eyes. "I can't let them have you," I whispered, slowly, painfully. But maybe, just maybe, I had the power to bargain. Just then, the front door shattered inward, splintering against the wall with a force that felt like a banshee's wail. The darkness rushed in, swirling and pulling, trying to claw at the edges of reality itself. In that moment of chaos, my mind turned over one last rule. Dad had shared a twisted rule. What if breaking the rules is the only way to survive? With every ounce of courage left inside me, I clutched the bunny tighter. "You want hunger? You want the truth? Then take me!" They shrieked, a sound so dissonant it split through my bones. Jimmy's cry pierced the void as the shadows wrapped around me, pulling tighter, reaching deeper. What had I just unleashed? A surge of dread rushed over me. As I felt the darkness try to envelop both of us, and amidst the whirl of whispers and laughter, a burning question lingered. Had I just sacrificed everything? What would we become now? As the shadows closed in, I could feel their cold fingers brushing against my skin, a deep chill that clawed at my sanity. The world grew dimmer, as if the darkness was stealing the light, devouring it for itself. Jimmy's cries were distant echoes in my head, his face contorted in a silent scream as he struggled against the pull of the shadows. "Lily!" He desperately reached for me, but the emptiness between us widened, a chasm that made my heart race. The shadows whispered again, hungry, insatiable, promising the release of my fears if only I would give in. "Feed them," the thought burrowed deep within me, thrumming like a heartbeat. The bunny could not satisfy them, and suddenly I was struck by a wave of clarity tinted in horror. The shadows wanted the essence of who we were, the light we carried inside us, the innocence that made us human. That I, in a frenzy, I turned to the darkness. You think you can take us? I shouted defiantly, though my voice trembled. You think I'll just give in? Rage welled up inside me, bubbling over into a fierce pulse of rebellion against the looming blackness, but as I stood there, a figure emerged from the shadows. It twisted and jutted like a broken tree limb, the outline both grotesque and eerily familiar. I squinted through the gloom, heart pounding against my ribs. My breath hitched. It was Mom. Except it wasn't the Mom I remembered. Her face was etched with sorrow, shadowed eyes staring back at me, glistening with unshed tears. Help us, her voice rasped, stretched thin like the fabric of a faded memory. You have to feed them, or they will take what you love most. For a horrifying moment, I was paralyzed. This wasn't really her. It couldn't be. But the specter bore the traits of a woman I had lost to the void long ago. It was her smile, her slight tilt of the head. I could practically feel her warm embrace, and this tore at my mind. No. You're not real. They want your love, Lily, she repeated, her eyes hollowing. They want the darkness to give them power. My knees nearly buckled. Fear coursed through me. Did I dare listen to this twisted specter? A desperate scream tore from Jimmy's throat, and it pulled me back from the brink. The shadows were tightening their grip, forcing us to confront our deepest dread. Lily, don't. Jimmy pleaded. It's not her. It's a trick. But even as he said it, doubt crept in. What if this was my chance to see my mother again? What if I could somehow save her from this darkness? My thoughts spiraled. The shadows churned around us. Feed us, they hissed again, a chant heavier than before. The weight of their hunger pressed upon my chest, and then I remembered something Dad had told me. Light is truth, he said. It burns the shadows away. You must let go to fight back. I felt the bunny slip from my fingers, forgotten in those horrible moments of conflict. I needed to let go of everything I clung to or risk losing both Jimmy and myself. That I looked at Jimmy, the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. We have to fight together. Whatever happens, we don't get separated. In a frantic decision, I closed my eyes. We will give you the light of truth. I shouted against the shadowed chorus. We will expose you. The shadows recoiled at my declaration, a pained screech erupting from their depths. The air crackled with energy, and a flicker of a raw, warm light began to push through the edges of the darkness, but it wasn't enough. I could feel my resolve wavering, the resolve that was quickly fading into despair. Would they swallow us whole before we even had a chance to shine? And just as I thought our fate was sealed, a blinding flare ignited in the hall. A sudden burst of light struggling against the suffocating dark. Had something awakened within these haunted walls? Or was it the last flicker of hope before the end? In that moment, I understood we were at a crossroads. The shadows were losing their grip, but could we harness that light before they reclaimed their territory? As the warmth grew, so did the shadows rage. The air crackled with tension. Would our grasp on the truth be powerful enough to free us, or would it become our final stand against the darkness that wanted everything we had? I knew one thing, this was only the beginning. The blinding light surged, pushing through the shadows like a hot knife through butter. I could barely breathe as the intense radiance splintered off the edges of the darkness, scattering its tendrils. Jimmy! I gasped, grabbing his hand firmly. Hold on tight. His fingers clasped mine, sweaty and trembling. I turned, feeling the shadows wail, a cacophony of distorted cries echoing around us. They lashed out like wild animals, seeking to reclaim their grip. The fleeing light illuminated parts of the long-abandoned hallway, revealing peeling wallpaper and pieces of furniture consumed by the creeping encroachment of darkness. Each flicker of brilliance sent the shadows recoiling, but they fought back, eager to plunge us into despair again. Keep your eyes on the light. I shouted, my voice breaking as I urged Jimmy forward. We have to reach it. As we sprinted ahead, I could hear whispers crawling along the walls, each syllable a chilling reminder of why we had to survive. Feed us, they droned, making my skin crawl. The urge to turn back, to give in to their seduction, threatened to swallow me whole. I shook my head, trying to dispel the allure, but their whispers burrowed deep. Lily! Don't listen to them. Jimmy shouted, yanking on my arm as I faltered. We were nearing the light, but it felt like we waded through molasses, the shadows clawing at my ankles. Just a little closer. We pushed through the weight of the shadows, the burden growing heavier with every step, like they were dragging chains behind us. A figure materialized beside us, the hidden specter reforming from the wall. It wore my mother's face again, drenched in shadows, her mouth twisted in a grin that made my blood run cold. Lily, help me, she hissed. Moments creaked in the air around us, expanding to a point where all I could feel was the trepidation closing in. No. Stay away. My heart raced dangerously. I could feel the pulse of my fears flooding back, and the urge to reach out for her was almost overpowering. Memories of her warm love clashed with the horror beaming back from her eyes. Mom, you're not real. I spat, forcing the truth into my own ears. They need you, her chilling voice echoed as she reached closer. You can save us, just give in, Lily. Run. Jimmy screamed, and suddenly, instinct kicked in. Without thinking, I started to sprint towards the light, dragging him along as my legs pumped with every ounce of energy I could muster. We broke past the threshold, bursting into the vibrant glow that engulfed the end of the hall. Shadows shrieked, the sound bitter and angry as they recoiled from the light like vampires from sunlight. The space around us expanded, the walls melted away into endless white. My gaze met Jimmy's, his eyes wide with disbelief, and yet the purity of the light filled me with hope. But a question lingered in the shadows of my mind: would this light truly protect us? Or was it just a brief reprieve before a far worse darkness returned? Peering into the blinding brightness, I felt something twitch at the edges, a creeping uncertainty. We're safe, for now, I whispered, doubting my own words. We can't just stay here, can we? Jimmy hesitated, his voice trembling. The light pulsed around us, a living thing, but I could see the shadows lurking just beyond the boundary we had created, a dark storm waiting for its moment. Lily, he added, urgency flooding his tone, if they find a way, what happens then? I shuddered, my heart racing. The light may have pushed the shadows back, but the echoes of their hunger haunted my thoughts, taunting me like a nightmare refusing to fade. We had escaped, but for how long? Before I could answer him, the light flickered, dimming just enough to let the whispers creep in once more. Feed us. They called, and cold dread slithered up my spine. Will we ever truly escape? I thought as the brightness around us pulsed faintly in response, an ominous reminder that the battle was far from over. A sinister sense of urgency pulled at me, as I sensed the shadows were devising a plan to reclaim us. The light couldn't last forever, and even if it was a temporary shield, where must we go next to ensure that we wouldn't be swallowed whole by the darkness? The weight of the question pressed on my chest, and realization hit hard. There was no way out until I unearthed the secrets hidden in this haunted place, secrets buried deep in echoes of my family's past. What terrible truths were waiting to be revealed, and would they be enough to finally drive the shadows away? The light wavered, swirling like a fragile lantern caught in a gust of wind, and the whispers outside grew louder, more insistent. Feed us, they hissed, the word us twisting through the air like a slithering serpent. Lily, what do we do? Jimmy's voice trembled, threading a note of panic into my own rising dread. I searched the bright expanse, the corners of the light a deepening shade of gray, revealing how unimaginably close the darkness loomed. Maybe if we run, we can find another exit, I suggested, though a part of me knew it could be futile. The specters of my childhood lurked kindly in the shadows, lurking behind my mother's haunted visage. What answers could there be for me here? Before I could gather my thoughts, a shudder rippled through the air, and the wall of light pulsed ominously. I grabbed Jimmy's hand tighter, too terrified to let go. Stick together, I urged, my voice shaking. "We can't let them pull us apart." The pulse intensified, an unsettling heartbeat, as the whispers transformed into incoherent screams that made the air crackle. A form flickered at the edge of light, a shadowy shape that danced like a marionette, its limbs elongated, claw-like. "No!" I gasped, taking a jerky step backward. "They're coming for us." They surged forward, a horde of darkness. Human figures warped and twisted into grotesque reflections of those I once knew. I saw my father's brooding face, eyes hollow and endless, filled with sorrow and longing, and the knife-offering smile of my brother, who had vanished into the night years ago. Flashes of my life flickered, they begged me to join them. My chest tightened. "Lily." Jimmy's voice crashed over my murky thoughts. "This isn't real. We need to move." We pushed through the light, but instead of resistance, it enveloped us in warmth, cradling us like a cocoon. I hesitated, drawn into the ghostly memories that danced just beyond reach. How could I leave my family behind? Let them go. They're not real. Jimmy pulled me back. With every passing second, the shadows inched closer, like smoke curling around a flame. The fear etched deep in his voice brought me back to reality. "We need to go." Taking a deep breath, I turned away from the specters, unwilling to look again. We sprinted forward, the brightness at our backs, the echoes of my childhood screaming for a chance to pull me back. As we ran, the hall of white faded into something darker, something undefined. There were no walls now, just empty space that felt like the void itself. Anxiety prickled at my skin. The whispers grew more desperate, more frantic. Feed us, I could feel the shadows tentatively reaching for me, their clamorous demands cruelly seductive. I pushed forward, enshrouded in terror, but with each heartbeat, it felt as if I drifted further from free will. "Lily." Jimmy's sharp cry jarred me back. "I can't." My voice broke, a heaviness pooling in my stomach as dread closed around it. The darkness shifted, and with it, a flicker of understanding surfaced in me. If the shadows were hungry, maybe they needed something more than just fear. Maybe there was a price I'd have to pay. What if we had to offer something to them? I whispered, formulating the thought before it even took shape. "No." Jimmy exclaimed, pure horror written across his face. "That's insane." But a nascent curiosity tugged at me. I could almost see visions of my family's fractured history, threads woven in a tapestry of forgotten memories. Darkness and light danced in my mind, battling it out for dominance. Could I be the one to mend it? As I took a step back, plotting within my racing thoughts, the shadows collectively hesitated, lingering just outside the edges of light. A new level of tension pulsed in the air. What if we could find a way to strike a deal? I said, my voice barely a whisper. Jimmy stared at me, wide-eyed and breathless. "You can't be serious." But too late, the thought had planted its seed, creeping in like a weed. And I had pushed us further down a darkened path that might lead away from the shadows or deeper into despair. What could I possibly give them, and would it cost us everything? The heart of my fear settled in my gut, as I sensed the shadows closing in tighter, eager for an answer. "Lily." Jimmy's plea pierced through the choking air, but I felt drawn, a moth to a flame, toward the haunting allure of those distorted faces. What did they want? What did I still have left to lose? Ahead lay only uncertainty, and with every passing moment, I felt the grip of the darkness tighten further. Would I dare confront whatever devastating truth awaited me, or would we dissolve into desperation? As I braced for whatever was to come, the light pulsated one last time, flickering, and then too gave way to an unsettling silence. Had we just made the wrong choice? The silence was oppressive. It wrapped around us like a heavy fog that stole our breath and held us in place. My heart pounded hard against my ribcage as the shadows pressed closer, their whispers now a cacophony of sinister intentions. "Lily." Jimmy's voice trembled, breaking the suffocating quiet. "What have you done?" Panic seeped into his tone, resonating with the wild fear in my chest. The weight of the choice loomed large, and I felt the shadows hovering, snaking around my ankles, pulling me toward the edge of that darkness. The silhouettes of my past flickered, reminding me of all I had lost. Were they trying to lure me into a trap? What if we really can bargain with them? I hardly recognized my own voice, low and trembling. What if it means saving us? Jimmy shook his head, eyes wide. No. You can't be serious. They'll just twist your words, turn this into something horrible. But the desperation grew within me, a bubbling urge to seize control of my fate, to grasp at the remnants of hope hidden within the churning shadows. Maybe, I whispered, barely believing the words, maybe I could offer them something real, something valuable. Something that shows I'm willing to let go. A low growl swept through the darkness, angered murmurs echoing around us. It sent chills crawling up my spine. They want us to feed our fears, I said, knowing I was teetering on an edge I couldn't see. What if we really could use that? Turn the tables on them? Laughter erupted, hollow and cold, sending shivers down my arms. It echoed with mockery, something from the shadows that felt almost sentient. You think you can give us what we want? A voice hissed, indistinct but chilling. Please. Tell me what you want. I shouted into the abyss, feeling dangerously bold. Far from the comfort of light, I had to break through this invisible barrier that imprisoned us. A chorus of whispers crescendoed around us. Sacrifice, sacrifice, what does that even mean? Jimmy blurted, eyes darting around, clearly terrified. I didn't know. The shadows pulsed with anticipation, and I felt a pull, as if I had become the lure in their game. Every finger of darkness seemed to hiss in agreement with my horror-laden thoughts. They want something I can give, I said softly, and a chill of realization washed over me as the gravity of the idea sank. My family. My history. My memories. Pieces of my past that danced like phantoms. Lily, don't. Jimmy's warning cut through the haze just before I took a deep breath. I will offer them a memory. A moment of clarity, something I've carried too long. If I can give up what's tethering me, maybe they'll let us go. The shadows twisted closer, sharp and jagged. Yes, they echoed in tandem, now almost demanding. I was conscious of the weight of the decision, finding courage in my fear. It was my fault, I muttered, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I didn't save them. I couldn't save my brother. The darkness demanded my vulnerability, and I felt layers of pain peel away, ready to unleash. A new entity emerged from the deeper blackness, ominous and looming larger than the others. What will you sacrifice? It bellowed, its presence smothering. I shuddered, my thoughts racing, the specters of my family swimming in my mind. Everything. I cried, desperation mingling with something like resolve. Just let us survive this. As I said those final words, the light from behind us flickered one last time. The shadows surged forward, reaching for me as if they could already taste what I would sacrifice. The blackness enveloped me, pulling me closer, threatening to crush the edges of my sanity. My pulse raced, adrenaline coursing through me as I knew the next moment would seal our fate. And then, amidst the chaos, a fleeting thought. Was I really ready to pay the price? Just then, I felt an icy grip on my heart. What if what I gave up led to something far worse? Was I willing to gamble with the very essence of who I was? The dark laughter swirled around me, but I dared not look back. The shadows waited hungry, eager. What would they demand from me next? The darkness swallowed me whole, a suffocating void where time stretched into eternity. It pressed against my skin, and I gasped, body trembling as panic clawed at my throat. Shadows pulled tighter, wrapping around my limbs, binding me with ghostly chains. I stumbled, desperately searching for a way out, but the abyss closed in. Lily. Jimmy's voice echoed through the oppressive silence, filled with terror. Don't do this. His presence felt like a flicker of light, but the grasp of shadows was far too strong. I could barely see him, but I could sense his panic, a wildness that mirrored my own. I had to keep him safe, no matter the cost. What choice do we have? I shouted back, straining against the encroaching void. We can't just let them take us. A rumble of laughter answered me, bitter and taunting. Embrace it, little girl. It's inevitable, the new voice slithered through the dark, reaching into the deepest parts of my fear. You have already begun the sacrifice. I felt the icy grip on my heart tighten, squeezing out all courage. Memories flickered before my eyes, my brother's face, twisted in pain, the last time I saw him, darkness swallowing his light. The shadows twisted, melding into the deepest fears I had locked away. Stop it. You can't have any more. I screamed, willing desperation to break me free. But the shadows hissed, each whisper pulling me under. You've already chosen your path. It's time to pay. The shadows shifted, coalescing into shapes that felt familiar yet horrifically distorted. I recognized the faces of my family, their eyes hollow, mouths stretched into grotesque smiles. Join us, Lily, join us in the darkness, they urged in unison, and I shuddered, stepping back, heart racing like a drum in a funeral procession. No. I shouted again, but the word felt weak against their collective persuasion. I sought Jimmy, his panic now intermingled with my own. We need to hold on. We can't give them anything. But what if giving is the only way out? He urged, his eyes darting around, looking for an escape. The idea lingered, heavy and real. Could surrendering be the key? The shadows pressed against us, hungry and relentless. Jimmy's desperation seemed to break through the fog. What if it's a trick, Lily? We're bargaining with monsters. But I have to try. I felt the tremor in my voice, the fear wrestling against a flicker of defiance. What if I can give them my regrets? Maybe then they'll leave us be. Don't. Jimmy reached for me, his fingers brushing against the creeping darkness. Don't let them in. They'll take everything. The shadows pulsed in anticipation, and I felt the cool breath of despair lace through my mind. They thrummed with energy, ready to swallow my offer whole. Suddenly, the weight on my chest lifted just a little, as if the darkness exhaled, noticing my hesitation. I could see faint outlines forming in the void's grip. These were memories, each one tied to remorse, guilt, and grief. My brother's voice echoed, filled with innocence I had failed to protect. It pierced through the chaos, resonating in the cavern of my heart. Lily, you have to let me go. A surge of emotion hit me like a hammer. It was profound, the pain clawing its way to the surface. No. I can't lose you again. I screamed, tensions boiling over. The shadows hissed back, threatening to overwhelm me completely. Sacrifice, Lily, they urged, now more like a growl, hungry for my surrender. What will you give? I felt the shrill fright trapped in my chest, creeping on the edge. There was a choice now mine to make, and the air thickened with my fleeting hope. Then, possessed by a strange clarity, I realized that the essence of my sacrifice might not just extinguish my anguish but might also break us free. Could I truly give them my memories? Was I prepared to erase the love I carried? As I teetered on the brink, the shadows hummed with excitement, their longing palpable. And then a thought pierced through. What if, by sacrificing my past, I lost myself entirely? Would the shadows simply absorb me? The laughter rose again, echoing through the void, as the darkness waited eagerly for my answer. Would I finally let go, just to survive? Or would I hold on, risking Jimmy's life and my own to defy them? The silence stretched, waiting, my heartbeat drumming louder than the last breaths of the memories I clung to. It all came down to this moment, this impossible choice. What would I really lose in the end? The howling whispers swirled around Lily and Jimmy, echoing their desires, teasing their fears, demanding their surrender. In the suffocating dark, something deep inside her shifted. A familiar ache surged through her heart, an understanding forming like a spark in the overwhelming gloom. Jimmy, listen, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. We can't let them take us. I don't need to feed the shadows with my past. What matters is you, right here and now. You're all that matters. Jimmy's wide eyes searched hers, fear battling the flickering flame of hope. But what if they get you instead? He breathed, his voice breaking. She shook her head fiercely. No. I'll never let that happen. Together, we stand against this. The shadows writhed, sensing the shift in her energy, frustration radiating from them. Feed us, they hissed, anger lacing through their whispers. But where fear once gripped her, confidence now bloomed. The pulse of the shadows fell short in front of her resolve. You don't scare me. She shouted defiantly, fists clenched at her sides. You want my fear? My pain? Well, that's not what will stop us. We're more than just shadows. The darkness roared, a cacophony of voices rising, angry and desperate, but Lily stood firm. A shimmer of light flickered at her fingertips, feeble, yet radiant. It was the essence of the love she fought to protect, the bond with her brother clawing through despair and matching the shadow's ferocity. Let us do this, Jimmy. She shouted, reaching out for him. We ignite the truth. A surge of warmth coursed through her, and in that moment, she knew they were not alone. Pulsating tendrils of light enveloped them, flickering against the looming darkness. With each heartbeat, the shadows recoiled, their wrath transforming into something like fear. Absolutely not. The dark entity howled, blotting out the glow. You think you can face the darkness? Yes. She shouted back with all her strength, clutching Jimmy's hand. We faced the depths of despair together. You can't steal our memories, they belong to us. We choose to live. In reply, light exploded from within them, a blinding fury that fractured the dark walls around them. Lily could feel their essence surging, creating a barrier against despair, solidifying into a protective shield that kept the shadows at bay. Run! She cried, the command pulling both of them into the illuminating brilliance. With every step, the light surged ahead, paving a path through the darkness with an unrelenting force. What had once been suffocating now felt liberating, rebirth pulsing at their heels. As they rushed forward, forms of light spilled from the shadows behind, the faces of their loved ones shining through, energies mingling as memories danced together, providing an unbreakable bond against the darkness. We remember who we are. Lily shouted, holding on to that overwhelming energy. Her father's voice rang clear in her mind, a promise he made echoing in her soul. Love conquers fear, truth defeats lies. With every pulse, the shadows began to fade, retreating like mist dissipating at dawn. The laughter twisted into cries of desperation, unraveling in a whirl of smoke. Each step brought clarity. The shadows were losing their grips, flailing against the collective light rising around the siblings. We can do it. Jimmy cheered, exhilaration pouring from him as he squeezed her hand, the warmth reminding them both of the sanctuary they had built in their hearts. We're breaking through. Then Lily saw it, a shimmering gateway in the distance, an exit from the dark labyrinth they had fought through. She tightened her grip on Jimmy, and together they surged ahead, racing towards the opening, the promise of freedom beckoning. As they passed through the threshold, the darkness erupted, consumed in their wake a deafening roar that echoed into silence around them. They stumbled into an expanse filled with light, soft and welcoming. Fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet, and the cool autumn air felt like a cleansing embrace. The moon hung like a guardian in the sky, its light bathing the world with hope. Jimmy fell to his knees, breathless, and Lily sank beside him, hearts racing and laughter escaping them, mingling with tears. They couldn't believe they had made it. I thought we'd lost everything, Jimmy said, fighting back tears as he looked at her. Lily shook her head, pulling him close. Never. We lost the darkness, but we kept the love. We faced their fear together, Jimmy. That's what matters. Time passed like a whisper as they sat there, a sacred pause amidst the chaos. With each gathering breath, the shadows dissolved into nothingness far behind them, but their memories remained, ready to safeguard who they were. That night became a vow, a promise cast in silver moonlight. They would never forget what lurked beneath their past, but they would always remember the strength they found in each other. As they rose, hand in hand, the first rays of dawn split the horizon, a new day filled with possibility. Together, they stepped forward, leaving behind the haunted echoes and the weight of shadows, choosing instead to embrace the future, and with each step, a soft whisper lingered on the wind, a reminder that while darkness may always exist, so too did the enduring light of love. Now, more than ever, they understood the power of choice, and it was theirs to carry into tomorrow. Do you feel that rush? You need to subscribe right now. Don't miss out on future spine-tingling stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button to keep the algorithm alive. Let us light up those comments with your thoughts and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And please, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this adrenaline rush.